I wanted to make a reaction video to the YouTuber SK on his video about the Spider-Man PS4 story. I think SK is a really good content creator. He obviously loves what he does, and I recommend going to check him out. I will link the video in the description. I also want to say I've been feeling a little under the weather lately, so my voice sounds really nasally and congested probably, but it's probably because my allergies are making my voice sound weird, but I'm going to do the best I can. Also, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure SK had a video bashing the story a couple years ago. I could be wrong about that, but it'd be nice to see how his opinions have changed and the positive things he has to say about this. So let's get into it and I'll give it my thoughts.
Marvel's Spider-Man is the best written Spider-Man game. It has the best written adaptation of Peter Parker in gaming, and tells a tight and endearing story. The characters are fleshed out and resonate with the themes of the story. The plot is structured coherently, and allows the characters to remain purposeful and focused. Over the years, I've grown to appreciate more about what the story has to offer, and gravitated towards making a detailed video to discuss what I find interesting about the story and why its choices work. With that said, let's talk about the story.
Yeah, it's interesting that he said this because, like I said, I think he made a video a couple years back saying he didn't like the story. I think he got in a few like back and forth video response feuds with some other YouTubers because of it. And now he's saying he likes it, which is great. I also like it. I'm just excited to see what he says.
The only way to fight a monster is to become one.
The manner in which Martin Lee is involved in the story makes for a great reflection of the core of his character. At Feast, he presents an image of a man who wants to make positive change. He built his legacy around helping those in need, which inspires May and Peter to join him on his mission. To show us the strength of their relationship with Lee, the first scene between these characters is a celebration of May's 5 years of service at Feast. Without directly telling us or having to rely on exposition, we can see through Lee's actions that he has a commitment to showing his gratitude, making sure the moment is as special and memorable as it can be for May. So much is achieved through this singular introduction in terms of building Martin Lee's character, while setting up more for us to learn about him.
Well, May's always told me if you help someone,
You help everyone. Yeah, maybe we should send May to City Hall to have a word with Mayor.
From an initial viewing, this might sound like an offhand remark, but once you have the full picture, you'll realize that this is rather a display of his darker thoughts, and that's what's effective about how this foreshadows his villainous side. No one could possibly know why he said this until we learn more about him.
It's definitely something that can be easily dismissed. How many people wonder to question that rather than just brushing it off? Like SK says, the comment makes more and more sense the more we play through the game. I sure don't exactly remember hearing this the first time and even batting an eyelash at it, but obviously looking at it now and understanding what happens in the game with Martin Lee and Norman Osborn, it's a real hell of a foreshadowing event there.
Martin Lee's character focuses on the concepts of duality and balance, and slowly shifting towards that darker half of him allows the story to build towards his connection to those ideas.
To be honest, I never really understood Martin Lee in this game to be a portrayal of balance. He does have two sides, of course. Martin Lee, who created Feast to help the misfortuned, and Mr. Negative, the psychopathic revenge-seeking murderer. But in the game, it seems like Martin Lee gets thrown to the wayside as much as necessary for Mr. Negative to succeed in his nefarious goals. I'm pretty sure Lee mentions balance at some point throughout the game, or maybe even a few points, but it seems like Mr. Negative will pretty much do what he needs to do to get what he has to get done to achieve his goals, which end up being getting revenge on Norman Osborn.
When Peter tells Lee about the demon mask MJ found, his immediate resort is to show concern. But why is that? Is it because he's afraid of what the mask represents? Or is it because he knows more than he's letting on? We can't know for sure, but there's a reason for the player to be dreading the possibility that Lee is secretly in on this. We've seen his connection to the Parker family, and his mission can bring plenty of good if it's motivated sincerely. So these decisions come across as conscious efforts to make players afraid of what the truth may be, rather than purely excited for it.
He seems to show some concern here, and I think he genuinely wants Peter, May, and MJ in this situation, even though I don't think he knows her at this point, to be safe, but not at all costs. This actually goes back to what SK is saying when it comes to the two sides of Martin Lee. Lee would like the Parkers and MJ to stay clear of trouble because he knows Mr. Negative is going to do whatever it takes to fulfill his mission. Kind of what I just mentioned before. Another thing to note is that I think SK was even alluding to this. We don't want to know the truth about Lee because he seems like a good guy. We see how Lee has this selfless side to him and can be such a great man, it will almost hurt us to find out there's evil behind him. This is extremely relatable because think of someone you look up to. If you found out that person has done terrible things, it would probably not only be difficult to accept, it would be quite sad as well.
Another great example as to how the story adds to the dread is when Martin Lee says he'll be out of town, without being able to specify for how long.
Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to let you know I'm headed out of town. You're in charge while I'm gone.
Well, you can count on me. How long will you be away?
Really don't know.
Is everything okay?
It's some personal business I've been planning for a while. But please take care of this place. It represents the best part of me.
Seeing the way this line is delivered, it's clear that Lee knows he's going to do something terrible, but his belief in his mission was sincere. This scene serves as a passing of the torch to someone Lee is justified in believing won't resort to the same failings he has. It's also an effective setup for his plans at City Hall. We learn more about his obsession with Norman through his phone call to him, alongside the secret room that shows us Lee has been following Norman's career over the years. It leaves the player curious about what we'll learn about Lee's backstory, why he would have such an obsession over one person. Especially since it ties into his growing, uncontrollable pain and anger that empowers his demon side to take over. As Peter learns about this, he eventually gets caught by Lee, and this leads into a subtle confrontation that shows us much about these characters and how their relationship is changing without outright telling us.
Hello, Peter.
Mr. Lee. I thought you were out of town.
Did you find what you were looking for?
Peter uses roundabout wording to call out Lee, hinting that he knows he's lying and that his stories aren't adding up. And due to how major of an event City Hall was, Lee is now forced to address it. Not only does it inform us more about his character, but it also shows Peter's attentiveness towards learning what he can about his enemy.
I really think Peter should have been more assertive here. I know it's a chess match and I understand May is still around to think about, but imagine if Peter really pressed him and asked Lee where he was out of town and really put him on the spot.
Peter was there. He was very lucky.
At an Osborne rally. I didn't know you were a fan.
Part of the heavy lifting for this line comes from the actor's performance, when he looks down briefly while commenting on a surprise. On the surface, this is just a filler statement to move the conversation forward, but as far as Peter and Lee's subtle confrontation, this shows us that Lee is trying to tell Peter something, that he never meant for Peter to get hurt by the attack. He thought too highly of Peter to ever show up at a rally for someone like Norman Osborn, so it only adds to Lee's sense of sorrow for the consequences his actions bring. So before he shifts focus back onto his mission, he gives Peter a way out by warning him to stay out of the situation.
This kind of goes back to what was said earlier, in that Lee seems to care about life, but only certain life. Some will still have to die in order for Mr. Negative to fulfill his goals. Lee would just rather it not be certain people, such as May or Peter, which is kind of what SK is alluding to here, with Lee subtly telling Peter, hey, stay away from these certain places.
I don't think you or May have anything to worry about. As long as you stay away from places you're not supposed to be.
And to show that he means business, he sends a group of people to jump Peter, but doesn't intend for them to actually kill him. We can see it in his performance that it pains him to have to make threats like this to deter Peter from getting involved, but the fact that they don't kill him reinforces the message to Peter that he has a way out.
I disagree with SK here because Peter knows Lee's ability to manipulate other people, but it's only because he is Spider-Man, which Martin Lee doesn't know as far as I'm aware. There's no reason Lee would think that Peter would pick up on Lee making the homeless people attack him, so Peter wouldn't get the message. I could be wrong, but if Lee knew that Peter was Spider-Man, he knows it's useless to send a few random people to attack him because it won't be effective. As we see, Peter easily fights them off without really harming them.
When Peter comes back to confront Lee again, the energy of the conversation changes once Lee believes he's talking to a different person. Not knowing who Spider-Man is, we get to learn about what Lee's thought process was behind if Spider-Man were to interfere.
I must be honest. I was hoping to bring you here. My abilities lend me a certain persuasiveness. I've been watching you. I was waiting for you at City Hall. You never came. Where were you?
Is this real or in my mind?
It was a shame so many had to die with no heroes to save them.
Yeah, so this pretty much confirms that even while he's in Spider-Man's mind, he still doesn't know it's Peter. He just believes that he's talking to Spider-Man and not Peter.
Norman wanted to use him. A futile gesture, in the end. And where was Norman during all this? Slinking like a rat. He knew what was going to happen, and he fled. Norman is a hidden cancer on this city. He must be excised with no trace of his corruption to return. Norman hides behind his mask of lies. I will break it apart and drag him into the light. Put on the mask. Become one of us.
This is a great performance by Stephen O'Yun here, the voice actor for Mr. Negative. We can really sense the hatred for Norman in his voice, and we almost take his side momentarily. It plays along the lines of the idea that Mr. Negative is willing to sacrifice innocence, though not in excess, to expose Osborn and get his revenge, just like we've been saying the whole time.
With all of their differences, they share an inability to let go of their core beliefs, and that only escalates the tension between their fights. Peter's tragedy pushed him to build his sense of responsibility and make sure nobody goes through what his uncle went through, while Lee's tragedy pushed him to relentlessly seek revenge for his parents. What Peter believes in helps everyone, while what Lee believes in only helps himself.
This is true, however, I think Lee believes he will still be helping people if his mission is fulfilled. I think he really believes he's doing the city a favor by getting rid of Osborn.
The Dark Side of Martin Lee tells a haunting, yet powerful story about what happens when you bring out the worst in people in the face of bad. It plays into a cycle of hate and violence that doesn't change what went wrong, rather it extends its consequences onto others. In trying to make Norman pay, Lee wants to force Norman to release Devil's Breath so that he loses everything he cares about through his own actions, the same way Lee did when he received his powers as a child. But the pain doesn't end for Lee. If his plan had actually succeeded, his pain only would have spread onto everyone else in the city. And once Doc Ock enables him to bring his plan into fruition, we see the horrifying consequences this has on the city, leading to the death of one of the last people Lee would ever want to hurt in his pursuit of revenge. As Lee becomes completely consumed by the demon, Peter makes his final pleas for Lee to fight the demon, and realize that he'll only end up destroying who he was.
Just like SK says, this goes to show that when a person lets themselves succumb to the hatred, tragedy is inevitable. Earlier, when SK said that Lee was trying to corrupt Spider-Man and make him an ally, he underestimated Spider-Man's willpower and his firmness in his beliefs. Spider-Man has a duty, and yes, a responsibility to never let that dark side win, and it results in Spider-Man telling Negative to shove it. When you look at Lee on the other side, he didn't follow the same principles, and the fallout was catastrophic.
Why do you insist on trying to save this piece of scum?
I'm trying to save you, Martin!
And by the end of it, we're given a fairly ambiguous ending, but one that works in concluding Lee's story for the game. We've seen his plan set into motion, we've seen how it made him lose everything, and we've seen the full story that led him to becoming this way. But once Spider-Man has defeated him, we see him grabbing the anti-serum at the end, as if he's considering what Spider-Man has to say. It shows a realization that he has more of a choice than he thought, and that he isn't purely evil for the sake of it. He has a possibility for redemption that is yet to be seen, but that of course leaves us with many questions to be answered for the future.
This is something I've always wondered, and I'll get into it in a Spider-Man 2 video as well. For Martin Lee, how much of his dark side actually influences him and how does it work? Can he turn it on and off? Is there a voice in his head? How much of Martin Lee is inside as opposed to Mr. Negative? It's something that may be better left unexplained so we can come to our own conclusions.
Otto Octavius represents the problem with someone who does the right thing for personal gain rather than the good of everyone else. It creates a strong illusion of someone who fights for the right ideals, and it makes it easy to underestimate what he's willing to do in the face of hardship. Many choices in the storytelling effectively set up Otto's reasons to drop the facade and unapologetically fight for what he wants. We first see Otto struggling at Octavius Industries. He can only afford to have one scientist on his team, and often runs into lab accidents that will cost him over time. He doesn't have many ways out since he relies on grants to sustain his work, and the game makes it very clear that he's already on thin ice.
I think introducing Otto like this is a vastly underrated part of this story. He has this rundown lab with only one lab assistant. He's disheveled looking. Things are breaking in his lab. We almost feel sorry for him in a way and think, how could this guy cause any real harm? It makes the ending hit us even harder when you consider these things.
The game ensures that Otto has believable problems that factor into his decisions in the story. In spite of this, Otto shows concern for Peter's well-being and his financial situation. He recognizes Peter's strengths and uses them to validate his role in his work. He shows understanding when he learns that Peter is Spider-Man, and even downplays his discovery to ease Peter's worries.
I guess if you design his equipment, you're bound to be a target too. Such a disappointment. Parker.
I think there's a problem with this whole sequence of Peter not knowing that Otto knows he's Spider-Man, but I'm gonna go into that in another video.
And he ensures that Peter feels safe with Otto, knowing that he's involved with Spider-Man in some way. It justifies Peter's trust in Otto and why he may overlook potential flaws that he should be more concerned about. And that's what makes Otto's manipulation so effective in this game. It's not obvious what he's doing at first to manipulate Peter. Sure, we know he's eventually going to become Doc Ock because that's common knowledge, but I doubt anyone playing this game for the first time could have guessed these small moments of Otto showing kindness and care to Peter were actually conscious manipulation tactics.
I think these were manipulation tactics to a degree, but I think Otto does care about Peter as well, at least in the beginning.
Another effective contributor to Otto having believable problems is the way in which Norman is shown to rival his creations. Since Norman was an old friend and business partner to Otto, it becomes more personal when his lab starts to lose funding and resources. Norman deliberately creates this scheme where he excuses Otto's violations to create a false sense of leniency, only to suddenly cut off Otto's funding so he has a motivation to return to Oscorp under a lower position. He even brings Otto's test subject to Oscorp in front of Otto's face while pretending to do so for benign reasons, just to rub salt in the wound.
I'm trying to help you, Otto. You're free to continue your work in a secure environment.
At Oscorp.
You always were the smartest guy in the room.
You haven't changed a bit.
Neither of you.
This is great for Norman's character, as it solidifies his crooked personality and justifies why Otto would hate him so much. Norman lacks loyalty for his own friends and willfully toys with people's livelihoods to remain in power. It only grows Otto's desire to take it all from him and for the world to see the man that Otto sees.
Yeah, this all gets us to further side with Otto, so it hits us even harder when he goes rogue.
He was most definitely inspired by the City Hall bombing, and his reaction to the event shows him fixating on Norman rather than the tragedy of what happened, and establishing these morally questionable responses helps justify the changes in his ideology that explains why he becomes a villain.
In some sad, sick way, the City Hall attack may have done some good. Norman's approval ratings are sinking. The people are starting to realize their beloved mayor only cares about himself. Sometimes it takes a tragedy to wake people up to the truth, to finally see the monster they themselves elected.
This is similar to how Lee was willing to put some innocents in danger in order to expose Osborn. Otto's mentality parallels Lee in that it's okay if some people get hurt or killed as long as it furthers their mission, which they believe is for the greater good. This is, of course, the opposite of Spider-Man, as has been stated.
But on top of Norman making numerous efforts to sabotage Otto, we learn that Otto has a condition that reduces his motor functions over time, which explains his focus on prosthetics as his way of changing the world. While this could be seen as a necessity for Otto to do more good in isolation, the larger picture makes it clear that this is a sign of Otto being more selfishly motivated. As Otto progresses and makes more breakthroughs in the story, he grows excited to the point of being reckless once he reaches the final steps. He's prepared to celebrate already before having tested the arms. He's so proud of his success that he takes offense to any kind of criticism or skepticism of what he created.
Doctor, I found a potential problem.
Everything has problems if you look hard enough. But fortune favors the bold.
Otto, the neural web isn't isolating your motor neurons. It could be affecting other parts of your brain, your inhibitions, your mood. I just think we need some more tests.
We've got enough testing! For the first time in my life, I don't feel like a failure. I feel like me.
Like I was saying before with Mr. Negative's dark side, I wonder how much of the arms were manipulating Otto here. Would he have been more open to criticism from Peter if he didn't have the arms, or is it 100% Otto in conflict with Peter in this scene?
And while Peter should be more attentive of Otto after learning how damaging the neural interface can be, Otto plays on Peter's faith in him to rest his concerns. When Peter urges Otto to slow down and give it time, Otto isn't really sincere in the way that he concedes to Peter.
Otto, you're not a failure. But this could permanently damage your mind. Please.
Remember what I was saying earlier with the way they introduce Otto? He's unintimidating, all over the place, seemingly completely unthreatening with his underdog persona. But this shot here turns the tables a bit. He becomes more confident, more seemingly put together, and he's towering over our hero, almost as if it's overwhelming for Peter. I wouldn't be surprised if that's on purpose. This shot is a great visual of what's to come.
Right.
This is all a front to get Peter to calm down, and it works given Peter's belief in Otto striving for good. If Peter can learn from his mistakes, shouldn't Otto be able to do the same? In Peter's eyes, Otto is looking to make the best choices he can, and Otto just needs to fight a little bit longer to hold up that image, causing Peter to overlook how crucial it is, especially now, to keep tabs on Otto and to make sure his bug fixes are safe. But I think the largest part that Peter has overlooked is how much of this is Otto himself or the neural interface. And it's interesting how Peter has to grapple with this after Otto becomes Doc Ock.
This is the exact question I have with many things in this universe, as I've been saying. If Peter really believes the neural interface could be corrupting Otto's mind as he says, then he should very much understand how dangerous Otto could become and is becoming. I think it's his worship of Otto and inability to see the bad side of his hero that affects him. SK has already alluded to this though, and I think he makes a good point. This is relatable because we as regular people do this all time with others in our lives that we look up to.
I think it's clear that Otto himself is the problem, not just the neural interface. A clear example of this is how Otto pre-built weapons into his claws and arms. Why would he need to do that when creating prosthetics for people? The neural interface couldn't have caused this design choice since he only started using this version of it after the arms were complete. Otto's hatred for Norman was genuine, so I can only imagine Otto had this idea in his head from the beginning and prepared to execute it before finishing his project.
Yeah, SK brings up some good points here, but I still question how much was already planned and ready to go in the beginning and how much the neural interface contributed. His boiling hatred for Norman was established early on, so it does make sense he had something cooking right from the start. The question is, how much? Maybe it's up for us to decide, and that's why these conversations are so much fun and interesting to have.
Given how soon he was able to act, he must have been prepared from the beginning. And that's really what makes Otto so terrifying in this game. His intelligence enables him to play on people's perception of him and cause them to underestimate what he's really capable of and willing to do.
Has anybody read Ends of the Earth? It's a Dan Slott story that takes place during Spider-Man Big Time, the comic direction they went right after the Brand New Day series. A dying Otto outsmarts some of the greatest minds in the Marvel Universe with his plan. It leads right up to Dying Wish and then Superior Spider-Man. It drives home what SK is saying here, even though the game is of course set in a different universe from the comics.
Peter couldn't have seen this coming because of his faith in his mentor. Norman couldn't have seen this coming because he believes that Otto is too small and too restrained to act against him.
You have no idea what you're in for.
This is what we were saying earlier with Otto's underdog persona. Him being underestimated ends up being devastating for his enemies, including both Norman and Spider-Man.
Once Otto becomes Doc Ock, the transition feels natural. There was enough buildup to support Otto's change, and his plan is centered around his personal goals and hatred towards Norman. It all makes sense for his character. He wants Norman to suffer, so he sends the villains to attack Oscorp properties. He remains in control by targeting law enforcement and deterring Spider-Man's involvement. Otto has a level of respect for Peter and even wants him to understand his side, so he doesn't want to go through with immediately killing him.
Doesn't this sound a lot like Martin Lee? Otto, similar to Lee, doesn't want to hurt Peter if he doesn't have to, but isn't willing to call off his mission of destroying Otto in order to ensure Peter's safety. He's too obsessed and far gone by this point. The two main villains seem to parallel each other in this manner.
Spider-Man, I presume. If you really cared about this city, you'd be helping me expose Osborn for the criminal he is.
Like killing innocent people?
I would have restored the power.
You're sick. You need help.
I have all the help I need, and we will not stop until Norman gets what he deserves.
In Otto's mind, he believes Peter doesn't care about what he has to say, or what his issues with Osborn are. His hang-up on Otto is seen as a dismissal of it, which would provoke Otto to be angrier than he normally would.
This I don't agree with. I don't think Otto would talk to Peter like this, saying he should join him if he believed he didn't care. I also don't know how SK knows Peter hanging up on Otto is a dismissal of what Otto is saying. Maybe Otto just thinks Peter violently disagrees with him, which is true. I also don't think Otto is more angry, even if he does think Peter is dismissing him. I think he's too hell-bent on taking down Norman to really care. It seems he wants Spider-Man out of the way more than anything.
Without the damage being done to his mind. And from there, that's where his plan with Peter has changed. First he wanted to deter his involvement. Now he wants to torture him because he has grown a personal hatred of Peter as well.
I don't really understand this narratively. It seems like torturing Peter would just get in the way of facing Osborn. I understand that Peter has shown Otto he has no plans of letting Otto go on with his mission without a fight, but the sudden jump from stay out of the way to now I want you to suffer just doesn't work for me.
A great way to build their rivalry is by forcing their ideas to clash more and more, which amplifies their rejection of one another. And while it's a smaller detail, it's great that they're showing Otto's shift in mental state the more his plan has drawbacks. When Spider-Man takes down his villains and Otto sees that Lee has failed, he throws him away like nothing despite the connection they've formed.
Seems like Otto and Lee have more of a history than I thought.
This also points to what we've been saying in that Otto's connections only go as far as they don't get in the way of his plan.
That look on your face. You can't imagine how satisfying it is.
Their final confrontation is really a shift in power amongst the two. Norman is now the desperate one who has to make a choice between his life and conceding to what Otto has to say. Otto has the full control to force this decision onto Norman, but to Otto's surprise, Norman is less focused on saving his own life and is more focused on hurting Otto in his last moments, showing his pure dedication to holding on to whatever power he has no matter what.
This is how cold Norman really is. He would rather die than grovel to his perceived enemies. I hope he keeps this energy as the Goblin in Spider-Man 3.
It solidifies who Norman truly is at his core and reaffirms Otto's hatred of Norman. At this point, Norman's words are such a hit on Otto's ego that he completely drops his plan just to immediately punish Norman out of anger, which is an interesting way to justify why Otto drops his grand plan he spent so much time and effort building up to. It shows that his ego can distract him from his original motivation and causes him to leave his plan unfinished.
Yes, but what are the odds Otto knew Spider-Man would catch Norman? I mean, it seems ridiculous, but it is a fictional video game after all.
This final scene with Peter and Otto cements how broken their relationship has become. Peter only sees the horrors that Otto has brought to the city rather than the good he has done. In his eyes, Otto has betrayed everything he claimed to believe in. It's only natural that Peter drops his naive view of Otto and realizes that there were problems building up from the start.
I look at this differently. To me, Peter is seeing all of the good Otto has done and what a great tragedy it is for Otto to have gone down this path. That's what makes it hurt so much for Peter and makes us understand the tragedy as well.
And Otto's refusal of accountability only cements this in Peter's eyes. He first accuses Peter of turning on him after he was the one who tried to torture him and kill him for trying to protect the city from all of his dangerous schemes.
This is a little comical, I think, because it's peak gaslighting or manipulation or whatever you want to call it. Otto is obviously in the wrong here, but he's going to try and turn it on Peter anyways. I mean, we all know at least one person like this in the real world. It's funny just to see it here.
Peter can see right through Otto when he tries to blame everything on the neural interface.
Yes, of course. You're right, Peter. Oh, I see that now. The neural interface affected my mind. But I can fix it. We can fix it. Together. If you'll help me.
Do everything I can. I'll make sure you get the best help.
No! If they put me away, they'll take my arms. I'll be trapped in this useless body! That wasn't me. You said you'd never abandon me. You promised. Remember?
Otto is trying to appeal to Peter's humanity, and it's not going to work because this is an experienced Spider-Man who knows there's too much on the line to give someone this dangerous any wiggle room. Great writing by Insomniac by making Peter stand his ground here.
Everything starts to make sense to Peter, and the scene tells us why Peter constantly improves and why Otto only gets worse. Peter takes accountability when he's at fault, sometimes even too much.
This is all my fault.
No, not this song again.
He sees every mistake as a lesson for how to do better in the future. Even if there's a difficult choice for him to make, he remains honest and accepts when he's part of the problem. He's not motivated by any reward, he's motivated by his responsibility to others. Otto regularly dodges accountability. He always needs someone to blame for his problems and sees every criticism as an attack on his success rather than an opportunity to improve. He manipulates people to stay on his side, while Peter uses the truth and his heart to maintain all of his allies. That's why Spider-Man still has a loyal team by the end, while Otto doesn't.
Well said. Peter is driven by duty to help others, while Otto is driven by his own selfish desires. This is a hero-villain trope that was well done here, carried a message that works for modern audiences.